Welcome to Carolina Psychological Health Services Security Privacy Training. Now let's talk about these policies. Release of information policies, red flag policies, report procedure policies, responding to government search warrants, subpoenas and requests for document policies, sanction policies, termination policies, work at home policies, and workstation use policies. Release of information policy. The records custodian will notify the appropriate healthcare providers when any of the following events occur. Patients or his or her representative requests information from the medical record. Patients or representatives request direct access to the complete medical record, or patients or representatives institute legal actions. The Medical Records Department will maintain a computer and written log to track the step-by-step process toward completion of each request for release of information. The record custodian will review and update this log routinely to give proper priority to requests and to provide early interventions in problem situations. Unless a law or regulation requires a more specific redisclosure, each disclosure outside CPHS will contain the following notice. This information has been disclosed to you from record protected by the Federal Confidentiality Rule. The federal rule prohibits you from making any further disclosure of this information unless further disclosure is expressly permitted by the written consent of the person to whom it pertains or as otherwise permitted by 42 CFR Part 2, a general authorization for the release of medical or other information not sufficient for this purpose. The federal rule restricts any use of this information to criminally investigate or prosecute any alcohol or drug abuse patients. Revoke of authorization. A patient may revoke an authorization by providing a written statement to CPHS. The revocation shall become effective when CPHS receives it. However, any actions taken by CPHS prior to the revocation remains in effect. Refusal to honor authorizations. The record custodian and other authorized to release information will not honor a patient's authorization when they have a reasonable doubt or question as to the following information: the identity of the person presenting the authorization, status of the individual as the duly appointed representative of the minor, a deceased, or an incompetent person, legal age or status of the minor, patient capacity to understand the meaning of the authorization, and current valid of the authorization. Red flag policy. In order to identify relevant, a red flag, which means a pattern, practice, or specific activity that indicates the possible existence of identity theft, such as CPHS component will consider the type of account that it offers and maintains, the method that it provides to open and access its accounts, the relationship of the component with others who may be providing billing information, and the component previously experienced by any known occurrence of identity theft. The following are recognized as potential red flags, some of which may not be applicable to each component's operations at this time. Red flags for documents. Documents provided for identification that appears to be forged or altered. Documentation on which a person's photograph or physical description is not consistent with the person presenting the documentation, and documentation with information that is not consistent with existing customer information. Person's address or phone number is the same as that of another person. Person fails to provide complete personal identifying information on an application when asked to do so. Person's identifying information is not consistent with information that is on file for the patient customer. Contact the patient customer. Notify law enforcement. Notify the affected patient if not the patient customer. Report procedure policies. The purpose of reporting health information breaches and suspect breaches is as follows. It minimizes the frequency and severity of the incidents, provides for early assessments and investigation before critical evidence is gone, quickly takes remedial action to stop breaches, correct problems, and mitigate damages, implement measures to prevent reoccurrence of incidents, and facilitates effective disciplinary actions against offenders. It is the policy of CPHS that all personnel should not only feel free to report breaches without fear of reprisal, but also understand that they have a duty to do so. CPHS will not take any adverse personnel or other actions against a person who reports an actual or suspected breach of security, confidentiality, or CPHS policies and procedures protecting the security and the confidentiality of health information as long as the report is made in good faith. Making a knowing false report, however, may result in disciplinary actions under CPHS sanctions policy. Who should report? All employees and others with access to health information must report breaches of security, confidentiality, or of CPHS policies and procedures protecting the security and confidentiality of health information as specified below. What should be reported? Employees and others must report the following: breach of security, defined as any event that inappropriately placed health information at risk for unavailability, improper alteration, breach of confidentiality, or other potential harm to patient, staff, CPHS, or others that may result in adverse legal action. Breach of confidentiality, defined as an improper disclosure of individual identified health information to a person or entity not authorized to receive the information. Any violation of CPHS policies and procedures relating to the security or confidentiality of patients' information, and any violation of CPHS policies and procedures relating to the proper use of computers and other information system equipment. How to report. The person discovering the breach or suspected breach must institute the reporting procedure as soon as possible after the occurrence of the breach or its discovery. The person discovering the breach must take the following actions. Initiate any necessary corrective action. If, for example, a data user detects a burning odor in a workstation, he or she should immediately turn off the power of the system components. Report the incident to his or her immediate supervisor if the supervisor is available. Report the incident to the privacy security officer. As soon as possible, make a written report on the security incident reporting form. Such reports are a risk management tool and not a patient care document. No such report may be made as a part of a patient medical record. The privacy security officer must maintain copies of all reports for at least 6 years from the date of the report. Responding to government search warrants, subpoenas, and requests for document policy. The overall policy. CPHS will release records when so required by law and will cooperate with lawful searches, but will protect confidential information such as patients' information and legally privileged information to the extent authorized by law. CPHS and its personnel will not attempt to obstruct any investigation or destroy, alter, or conceal documents or other evidence sought in the investigation. Upon receipt of any request or subpoena for records from any government agency, all employees must forward the request to record custodian. When receiving the request or subpoena, CPHS must maintain a log of such documents, including time and date of receipt, the name of the requesting entity, documents or information requested, date forwarded to the legal department, date received back from the legal department, and date request of subpoena compliance with or in the privacy security officer or CEO that CPHS should not comply, the date that the decision was communicated to the requester. Sanction policy. Any employee or CPHS who believes that another officer, employee, or agent of CPHS has breached CPHS security policies or the policies and standards should immediately report such breach to his or her supervisor or to the privacy security officer. The privacy security officer will conduct a thorough and confidential investigation into the allegations. An employee could expect to lose his or her job for a willful or grossly negligent breach of confidentiality, willful or grossly negligent destruction of computer equipment or data, knowing or grossly negligent violation of HIPAA, its implementing regulations, or any other federal or state law protecting the integrity and confidentiality of patient information. Termination policy. HIPAA and the DHHS security and policy regulations require termination procedures for all personnel with access to individually identifiable health information. Supervisors are responsible for notifying the privacy security officer and billing supervisor of employees and others, such as independent contractors who will be leaving CPHS employment or otherwise through reassignment, extended absence, and so forth, and will no longer need access to health information. Work at home policy. With certain exceptions, CPHS does not encourage working at home. However, for those working at home with PHI, CPHS is required to ensure that the PHI is adequately safeguarded. Employees who work at home are subject to all CPHS rules, policies, and procedures applicable to those who work for CPHS, including but not limited to HIPAA policies. Security. Materials, documents, and so forth transported to or from the official workstations are the employee's responsibility. The employee shall protect CPHS records and documents from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure. Workplace use policy. Preventive measures. All computer users will monitor the computer operation environment and report potential threats to the computer and to the integrity and confidentiality of data contained in the computer system. For example, if the air conditioning fails so that the temperature around the computer may exceed a safe level, the user must immediately notify the Privacy Security Officer or CEO. All computers plugged into an electrical power outage will use a surge protector approved by the Privacy Security Officer. All personnel using computers will familiarize themselves with comply with the covered entity disaster plans and take appropriate measures to protect computers and data from disasters. Personnel logging into the system will ensure that no one observes them entering their passwords. After 3 failed attempts to log on, the system will refuse to permit access and generate a notice to the system administrator. Personnel will not log onto the system using another password, nor permit another to log onto their password, nor will personnel enter data under another person's password. Each person using the covered entity computer is responsible for the content of any that data he or she inputs into the computer or transmits through or outside the covered entity system. No person may hide his or her identity as the author of the entry or represent that someone else entered the data or sent the message. No employee may access any confidential patient or other information that they do not have a need to know. No employee may disclose confidential patient or other information unless properly authorized. See the confidentiality policy and the disclosure policy. Employees must not leave printers unattended when they are printing confidential patient or other information. This rule is especially important when 2 or more computers share a common printer or when the printer is in an area with unauthorized personnel have access to the printer. Personnel using the computer system will not write down their password and put it at or near the terminal, such as putting the password on a sticky on the screen or a piece of tape under the keyboard. Personnel must log off the system if they leave the computer terminal for extended breaks or lunch hours. No personnel may upload any unauthorized software or data. The Privacy Security Officer must approve any software or data that an employee wishes to upload. This rule is necessary to protect against computer viruses from being transmitted into the covered entity system. Enforcement. All employees of CPHS must adhere to these policies. All supervisors are responsible for enforcing these policies. CPHS will not tolerate violations of these policies. Violations of these policies are grounds for disciplinary actions up to and including termination of employment, criminal or professional sanctions in accordance with CPHS sanctioned policies, and personnel rules and regulations. So as a summary, we discussed about HIPAA, patients' rights, safeguards, and workplace policies. For more information, you can review the CPHS HIPAA Compliance Manual and additional policies and procedures required to comply with the HITECH Act and related laws and rules binder located in the Record Custodian's office. And lastly, any questions?